In this video, I'll share how I would start a new garden from scratch if I could start over. Welcome to Geeky Greenhouse. My name is Calvin and I've been gardening for over 10 years now. And through all of those experiences, I've definitely learned a thing or two. And looking back, I think there are some things I would have done differently if I had the knowledge I have today. Now, first, I do want to say that I don't think any two gardens should really be the same. And I'm a huge advocate of figuring things out on your own, learning as you go by making some mistakes. However, there are some mistakes that I wish I never made that were unnecessary frustrations early on. So if you're just getting started, you're a beginner and you don't have all that much gardening knowledge, this video should be pretty useful. So if I could start over, where would I begin? Well, the first thing I would consider when starting a new garden is whether I'll be growing from seeds or from store-bought nursery plants. There are definitely good reasons to start from seed, but it is considered more of an advanced technique. You have to start the seeds indoors, usually weeks before they go outdoors. And during that time, seedlings can be delicate, a little more challenging to care for, and it's just another opportunity for you to fail where you really don't want that to happen. Transplants, on the other hand, all of that work is done for you. The seed starting, germination, and growth to that point, it's already done. You can just buy the seedlings for a relatively cheap cost and plug them out into your garden and let them grow from there. So you can see why, as a beginner, it would definitely make sense to at least buy some transplants. And usually garden centers in your location will have varieties that are suited to your climate, so they'll usually do well in your garden. So it's a really great idea to at least have some plants that you get from the nursery rather than starting from seed. But the main draw of starting from seed is, one, you get to garden earlier. If you're excited about gardening and getting started, you can start weeks, sometimes even months earlier indoors and get your green thumb active earlier in the season. And the main draw to growing from seed, I would say, is the broader scale of variety selection. If you want to grow some obscure plants, maybe there's just one tomato variety that you really want to see growing in your garden with stripes or weird foliage, well, you're probably going to have to start those from seed. So overall, yes, it's a little more rewarding to start from seed. You'll get more selection to choose from, but as a beginner gardener, I would definitely support your local nursery and pick up some started plants in the spring. The next thing I would consider is variety selection, the actual types of plants that you're going to grow, the types of peppers and flowers and corn and vegetables, the specific varieties that you plan on growing. Newer gardeners are often drawn to the hobby in the first place through very flashy plants, big leaves, and colorful flowers, and maybe some varieties that aren't really the best options for beginner growers. I'm not saying you shouldn't grow cool plants. Of course, that's one of the reasons we get into gardening in the first place, but I do think you should have some other plants that are easier to grow, maybe have some disease resistance, are designed for growth in your particular climate. Things like that are important to look for in your first garden. I think it's so important to have success in your first season if you expect to have a long career of growing plants. If you fail your first season and all you see are setbacks, it's very unlikely that you're going to continue on with this hobby. So by getting some plants and choosing varieties that are easier to grow and will deliver results for you with less work, you're more likely to have fun and feel rewarded at the end of the season and going forward. This is actually a great example of a plant that we discovered after years of growing peppers. It's called the Cayennetta, and it's a hybrid variety that has really compact, bushy growth, really healthy plants that do well in our climate and are very high yielding and easy to grow. You want to have success in your first year, and by selecting varieties like this one here, you can do that with relatively little work. So focus on reliability, vigorous plant varieties, high yielding types, disease resistant varieties, and those that are just easier to grow. The next step I would take is consider using grow lights to grow your plants from seed indoors. While this definitely isn't necessary, if you want to grow from seed and some of the most interesting varieties will need to be grown from seed, then grow lights can make a huge difference. We've done the testing. It makes a huge difference when compared to window light. Even if you're using a south-facing window that's very sunny all day, the sun is just not as reliable during those late winter and early spring months. Grow lights can be set on a timer for up to 16, even 24 hours if you wanted, so your plants have much more consistent and a longer duration of light every day. So the end result is your plants will grow more quickly from seed. You can start your seeds a little bit later in the season as well, so you don't need to be growing them indoors for quite as long. And when it comes time to move those seedlings outdoors, they'll be off to a much better start, and they should transition better into the garden. The next thing I would do when starting a new garden is consider getting some higher quality supplies that are built to last longer. I don't know about you, but when I think of gardening and growing my own food, I do think about sustainability, and by using things like single-use plastic pots, it feels kind of icky to me, and I'd really rather never throw away my gardening supplies if they can just be reused the following season. And that leads me perfectly to the sponsor of this video, Bootstrap Farmer. We've been using Bootstrap Farmer products for 6 or 7 years now, and a lot of those original products we invested in are still going strong today. They make highly durable and thoughtfully designed gardening products like seed starting trays and humidity domes and everything in between to make sure that when you buy something new for your garden, you know it's gonna last for years and years. If you're just testing the waters and you're not sure if you're gonna be a gardener for the next decade or longer, maybe you do just wanna try it out for a season, see if you actually like it before making the move to something higher quality. But when that time comes, I do recommend Bootstrap Farmer. They're always improving their products as well, but they're all made with quality being the most important factor. The next thing I would do when starting a new garden is start small. You don't want to go out and start a 50 by 50 foot garden for your first endeavor into the hobby. It will definitely be overwhelming. And usually when you're gardening, if you have more things to care for, and that can lead to neglect and overwhelm in the garden, causing you to potentially give up. Instead, I would say start with maybe a 4 by 8 raised garden bed, and that's it. Or even smaller, just plant a few container plants and see how you like growing those specific plants. It's easy to get envious watching other people grow their massive gardens with everything you could possibly grow under the sun, but trust me when I say as a beginner, it's much better to have your attention focused on 1 or 2 plants or a very small group of plants so that you can actually give the attention to them that they need and get the results that you're looking for. If you are looking to design a 4 by 8 raised bed, we have a great printout that you can use that divides up the garden beds into square feet. The square foot gardening method is another great method for beginners, so you can actually physically lay out those 1 by 1 foot spots in your garden and then plug in the recommended number of plants for each type of crop into those square feet. Makes it very easy to design your garden logically. And that actually leads me perfectly to the final thing I would do when starting a new garden, which is take the time to design your garden wisely. There are 3 main principles that I'll cover here. The first is location of your garden. You want it to be somewhere that is very sunny. Most, if not all, vegetables love full sun conditions. And in the case where you need to provide some shade, you can do that artificially. So a nice south-facing, unobstructed area with lots of sun throughout the day is ideal. The next is the physical design of where you'll be planting your plants. So taller plants should go at the back of your garden, basically on the north side of your garden, so that they're not shading out the smaller plants, which you should plant in the front or the south side. So a great example of this is corn. It tends to be somewhere between 6 and 8 feet tall. If you really want to grow corn, you should definitely plant it on the north side of your garden, so it's not casting shade on your smaller basil plants or your small peppers. That way everything in the garden is getting southern exposure and not shading each other out. And the final principle of design that I want to cover is diversification. It can be very easy to be drawn to a specific crop family like peppers. Obviously, we have a channel all about growing peppers, and that's how we got into gardening. But it's not a great idea to just monocrop, basically grow the exact same crop in the same location year after year. It's much better to have at least some diversification in the garden, even if it's just a few different crops, some flowers here and there, to bring the diversity up. And essentially, this will make your garden more resilient to pests and disease issues. So if you're only interested in one specific crop, at least force yourself to plant maybe some alyssum or some zinnias, some very easy to grow flowers, and hopefully even more than that, some root vegetables like carrots and maybe some leafy greens or brassicas. Diversification can be a huge benefit to your garden above and below ground. So if you're about to start a garden, I hope this helps direct you a little bit. And really the most important thing is to just get started, get yourself a plant, start caring for it, get the results you're looking for, and I'm sure you'll be a gardener for decades to come. Make sure to subscribe to Geeky Greenhouse and give this video a like if you enjoyed it. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon.